learn something about people, nations, and the way they are now. In Christ's name I pray, amen. We left off here at number 8 on Judges. And we then call this, and we do have a list we call the Cycle of Nations. We're not going to go over that. I do have it, and I got this from a preacher someplace. I think when we were at Bible Believers, there was a guy that came in, I think, and he gave the Cycle of Nations. I wrote it down. I have it in the beginning of my New Testament. And for information, here they serve the Lord, they sin, they become slaves, they cry to the Lord, a judge is raised up, and then they're delivered. And then it goes through these cycles. And in reading old books, and they use the celestial bodies to give certain points as to why things are. You have the sun during the day and you have the moon at night, right? The sun's out right now. I mean, you can't see the sun, but you know it's brighter out there. Obviously, the sun is there.
The sun is flat.
The sun is flat.
If yours is flat, so is the sun.
The sun's flat too. Yeah. So anyway, you got that big vanilla wafer up there. And they use this illustration about the moon. The sun is always shining, and especially during the day, it's always shining. Now, what about the moon, though? And it's reflected light. Is the moon always a full moon?
Nope.
It is. It never changes.
It's always there.
Well, it's always there, but they'll use this as far as the reflective light. They'll say, if we can apply it, I'm just thinking about it now, how we can apply it to the Cycle of Nations, is the church is not always on fire for the Lord. So when is the church not on fire for the Lord? What kind of moon would that be?
Christmas and Easter.
No? Pardon?
New moon.
A new moon. It would be a new moon, the cycle of moons. Now the grandfather clock out there does have a moon dial on it. And probably, I know when the guy came out that got it going, he set the moon dial. And since then, I think it stopped or something, and I started. So the moon dial might be off. But a new moon, and they'll give an illustration. These guys, they just know how to give illustrations. They give an illustration because the church is likened unto the moon. And we reflect the light. There's verses to show that. And then they'll say, well, sometimes the church is kind of out of it. And they liken that unto the new moon. When the moon is dark, it's not reflecting the light of the sun. And you don't see it, or only partially, where it's a waxing or a waning moon. And when it's really on fire for the Lord, it's at a full moon. And they give those illustrations, and I'll tell you, it works. It works, and there's probably then truth to that. And so through the sequence of the Cycle of Nations is people serve the Lord. They got why is it everybody's got to get saved? They got to hit rock bottom. You know, they say you got to hit rock bottom. Well, the church has got to hit rock bottom. Israel hits rock bottom before they get back going again. They become slaves to the devil. They cry to the Lord. The judge is raised up and delivered. Now, we did say there were 14 judges. 12 of them are in the book of Judges. Eli and Samuel are the last two. And the lining up of these judges does not last. It's hard to line them up for the 450 years. So the idea about it is that these judges overlapped each other. They ruled in different parts of Canaan in Israel at the same time. So some of them, it just mentions them, and it could be just one paragraph. They go to the next judge, where there's really no story. So they could have been simultaneously reigning at that time. All right, so Judges is divided into 3 sections, chapters 1 and 2. incomplete obedience in chapters 1 and 2, incomplete obedience, dependency on God, and the reason for it, they have this problem is that they did not drive out the Canaanites. They're supposed to drive them out. All right, liken that unto our salvation. When we get saved, you have your old nature, and you're supposed to, I preached this message, I only preached it once. We were still up in the loft. I preached the arena of faith. How many crosses are there?
3.
Now, I don't mean the 2 thieves and Jesus.
Crossing the Jordan.
No, I don't mean that kind of a cross. No, I'm talking about like that cross. You got the cross on Calvary, and then what are the other crucifixions? I shouldn't say
Crucifying the flesh.
Crucify the flesh, you're right. So the
And it's
crucifixion of
thieves.
Christ, crucify the flesh, and what else are you to crucify? Yeah, that's the flesh. You're to crucify the
Affections.
the world. The other one is the world. I'm pretty sure. The 3 crucifixions. You crucify, Christ is crucified. You're to crucify yourself, the flesh, and there's the crucifixion of the world. I forget where that appears right now. I think it's in the prison epistles, Galatians, Ephesians. There's the three crucifixions there. So, driving, if you want to apply it to your life and my life, the driving out the Canaanites would be then the crucifixion of the flesh, and the affections thereof, where to crucify that, drive that out of our life, feed the new man, starve the old man, right? That would be equivalent to driving that out of our life. And by the way, it's a lifelong situation. It's a slow, agonizing death of salvation. What part of salvation is that? As a test, what part of salvation? There's redemption, that's salvation, terms for salvation. Redemption, it would be our sanctification, sanctifying you and I. To sanctify, to set us apart for His holy use. And that is the only part of salvation that is incomplete. And it's you can find verses where it's complete, but it's an ongoing process. You got to get rid of all that nonsense. And I'm going to liken that unto driving out the Canaanites. Let's look at a couple of these. Judges 1:22. The house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. Okay, so they were to drive that out. They drive out the Canaanites. Verse 27, neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and her towns, nor Taanach and her towns, and so on. So it's giving this rundown that they did not do. Go back to Deuteronomy 7:1. Probably this command. Remember Deuteronomy, the time frame of Deuteronomy, it is takes place in 1 month. Deuteronomy, as far as a period of time, the writing of this letter, the history of Israel for 1 month. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and has cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. But you don't want to have a name that ends with "ite," right? All right, so in the history of things, and you read, if we read Deuteronomy 7:1, are any of these still in existence today? You got the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. None of those names are recognizable as any nation or group of people today. What still remains today?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, that's not a, you're warm, but you didn't hit the nail yet. You're real close to the nail. Jerusalem, give me another word. These are groups of people. Pardon? The Jews, give me another name.
Israel?
Israel's still here, right? Israel's still here. And so Hitler tried to wipe them out. The Muslims have tried to wipe them out. Everybody's trying to wipe them out, but they're the ones that are still there, right? They're the ones that are going to survive all this. So God's command is to drive this out. And trying to apply this and making it practical for you and I is to drive sin out of our life. That would be the sanctification of the believer, driving that out. Chapters 3 through 16 basically is the history then of the judges and the forsaking of God. Excuse me, through this driving through the history of the nation Israel and the judges. Chapters 17 through 21. The morality during the judges. By the way, what is it? I think it says it in Judges. Every man did, how did they rule themselves, the morality there? They did what? They did right. They did what was right in their own eyes. All right, so far, now let's apply that right now today. They did what was right in their own eyes. They make it up as they go. So apparently before the election, there's hundreds, apparently literally hundreds, you're not going to see it on CNN, hundreds of lawsuits that were taking place presented by the Democrats throughout the nation to change the voting laws. To change and moving what?
You're into their own favor.
What is it in football? You're not to move the what?
Goalpost.
And they're moving the goalposts. Changing the rules. Now we have experienced, we personally have experienced this as a third party being involved, but not directly involved, where we could suffer we did suffer as a result of it, but not us personally, even though we personally suffered. And that is that when we were involved with the county, with the children and our bus children, and the way we met these children was through the bus ministry, going into town, picking up children, bringing them here. I mean, at one time, I think we had 10 kids or a dozen kids would come on the bus. And they would come here on a regular basis. Then we were asked to get involved with one family. And the county was the prosecutor. Oh, by the way, they're saying to people, and the things that they're saying, and if you listen to Rudy Giuliani and his spiel, and I don't know how many people that are just regular Americans that get this, is you go to the election board and they say, well, there's no fraud here. What's wrong with that statement? Yes. They are the what in the case?
The judge.
No. Exactly. There's no fraud here. And Rudy Giuliani said, but they're the defendant. Now, I don't know if the American people understand that. They may not get it. If you can't get that the guy that they elected is he's no fault of his own, missing a marble or two. If people can't see that, then they may not get the fact that, well, hey, there's no fraud here. Well, they're the defendant. And you say, well, it's but the Secretary of State, which is in charge of the election, he's a Republican. Well, what's that called? If he can't handle it. He is what?
Incompetent. Rebellion.
Incompetence. And if you think it isn't total incompetence, Go dial 911 and have a few of these people show up for an emergency, you'll find out. And they couldn't figure out how to work the fire extinguisher. Put on a fire, the fire's going on. Did you guys inspect they brought the wrong ladder. They couldn't get up to the top of the chimney. They couldn't work the fire extinguisher. They couldn't work it. And then that one guy said to the other guy, well, who inspected these fire extinguishers? It wasn't working. And while this thing is ablaze, I figured, well, I took the bucket, I started shoveling out the firebox, and I kept dumping it outside. I ended up putting fire out. Then we close the door, it chokes the oxygen off, we put it up. Then they finally get the right ladder. They said, do you mind if we crawl up on your slate roof? I said, yeah, I do mind. You need to get the right ladder. My plumber happened to be there. And he said, you didn't call the fire department, did you? I said, yeah, I did. And he said, they're going to do more damage than good.
Yeah, it's all they know how to
finally got
do.
up there, and as we're sitting there, the firebox is open, the doors are open. They dumped this white powder down to put the fire out. It's a chimney fire. It permeated the entire house. And the captain turns around. Do not be alarmed. Do not be alarmed. It is non-toxic. And thinking, as it's billowing it out.
Besides, we don't live here.
Yeah, besides, we don't live here. You would think that it's a notch above. Folks, it isn't. They're just regular people like you and I. Like you and I. They're not special people. They're just regular people. And so anyway, getting involved with these judges is the county would say, oh, well, we've been assigned a court. We're going to be assigned a court. They would want to get in a certain court. Because if they get into that court, if you get your notices for election, right, you get the cheat sheet, they never identify the judges, but on the cheat sheet they'll identify the judges, whether they are what? Yes,
Yeah.
a Democrat or a Republican. And if they get in the wrong court, they're going to have a ruling against them. And so what happened, as one example, the kids were with us, and then it got into the wrong court. The decision was that they would go to school with us and go home with them on the weekends. They would go to school with us and home on weekends. And the county came back to us and said, that's the ruling. And they said, that is not according to the law. They make it up as they go, folks. They make it, I said, well, what do they do? They said they actually make up the rules as they go. Instead of adhering to what it says on the books, they go and do whatever they feel like doing. I think it was the longest night of our life. When those kids knew they were going to go home. Do you remember that night? And then they said, we should have probably called 911. And had those kids that finally removed. It ended up ruining the whole thing. And that judge is going to have to pay for that decision in eternity. It was evil, awful. It opened up the door for their problems again. Oh, when they came back, in the problems that had occurred, it was just, we actually made a lot of headway, and it all was destroyed with one decision. With one decision. And so you have these judges now that are making these judges that are ruling against Trump. Well, they're probably making it up as they go. Well, the Supreme Court in whatever state, Michigan, Pennsylvania, said that we're going to do this, but it goes against the Constitution. It's going to eventually have to skirt that and go above that to the next court if it ever makes it there. And that's going to be our title, because Trump is running out of what? running out of time. They're gonna run out the clock, because they're saying a lot of this stuff takes years to develop these cases. And so they're running out of time. So there's these judges, the story of the judges and the history of Israel and the forsaking of God. And every man did what was right in his own eyes, chapters 17 through 21. And that's the morality during the judges. Oh, this is where they have the idol, and there's, I can't think of the story, they have a young man and they make him the priest, and they call him what? What do you call that priest? What do you call a priest? Father. I think it actually says father, and it says it's a young man, and he becomes the priest of a tribe. That is Benjamin. And then they come and steal the priest. They take the priest, and he goes. Instead of being the priest of one man, you could be a priest of the tribe. Is that the way it works with Baptist preachers and any preachers? They always are. Do they make when they make a move? Is it a lateral move? Is it a move up or a move down? When they change jobs, they move from a smaller church to a bigger church. Why?
More people.
More people. More people means what? More money. I mean, the whole thing's a racket, man. If God's leading you, why couldn't God lead you a set down stuff in the eyes of the world? It's a racket. I haven't said that in about 20 years. It's a racket. All right, so morality in chapters 17 through 21, this is probably where you have the story of Samson. Morality during Judges, anarchy against God. Chapter 17 through 18, this is Micah, the Levites, and the Danites. Religious depravity. In fact, let's turn there. 17:6, chapter 17. Verse 6, we say this is the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church. Let's see if it's here. Oh, well, here's where it says it in 17:6. It does say it later on, too. In those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And so the law's all over the place. They just do whatever they want. I also have 18:1. In those days there was no king in Israel. In those days, the tribe of the Danites sought them an inheritance to dwell in. For unto that day all their inheritance had not fallen unto them among the tribes of Israel. So they go out and where Micah is, and they get Micah. So it's the Danites. I said Benjamin, but it's the Danites that take him. Chapter 19, national depravity. This is the other one, where the Levite has the concubine
Chopped her into 12 pieces.
and chopped her up
I remember that story.
and shipped her out. Chopped her up and shipped her out. In the movies, who does that? I've never seen the movie, but I've heard it. You wake up and there's a horse's head or something.
Oh, yeah, Godfather.
The Godfather. I mean, these are evil, wicked people. You've heard the story on the waterfront, that movie. My dad said that those labor unions would kill entire families. Those mob bosses back in the 40s and 50s, and they would kill it, wipe out entire families, and it's all over what?
Money.
It's all over money. Why don't they want Trump in there?
Because you're depleting it.
It's all about what? Because it's going to all go back to China, so all these billionaires can get their money to sell you and I cheap products, put American businesses out. It's always about the money. That that in the end, the money is that is the mammon of the world. That is the idol of the world. The dollar.
Them things from China is made by slave labor.
Yeah, they were showing that, and you're not gonna see that on CNN. I don't know what they call those people, it's a group, it's an ethnic group in China. It's a certain ethnic group, and they have been, from what I've seen, what the stories that I see on the news, these people are enslaved. Well, anyway, the Levite, the concubine, the sons of, and this is probably where the sons of Belial show up. Now, somewhere, I don't know if it was in a movie or if it was on the news, that somebody had said Belial. And that is the son of the devil, that's a type of the devil. Benjamites, verse 16, I don't know what, chapter 19, in fact, we'll go to chapter 19. I have marked down there, verse 2. And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him unto her father's house at Bethlehem, Judah, and was there 4 whole months. Well, he goes there to get her. Yeah, that's the story. Verse 16. Behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at evening, which was also Mount Ephraim. And he sojourned in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. Or so they were Benjamites. Verse 22, now as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, who set the house round about, beat at the door, and spake to the master of the house, the old man, saying, bring forth the man that came into thine house, that we may know him, meaning the prophet. And they throw the concubine out, and defile her at that time. And then in verses 29 and 30, that's when they cut her off. So they wanted to know the man. So that makes those sons of Belial, what were they? Evil. Well, what kind of evil? If the man wanted to know the man. Sodomites. And they say the worst thing you can call them, the thing they hate to be called, is a sodomite. Now, with all the microphones and all the cameras today, just be careful. Just be careful. Make sure there's no microphone and no camera if you're going to do that. But they are sodomites and they're evil. Just evil, evil people. They are raising their ugly head. Chapters 20 and 21. Political unrest. Oh, yeah, they kill off the Benjamites. And I think there's only 500 or 600 of them left. They go and kill them. Chapter 20, verse 48. And then since the tribe is wiped out, and if you remember, Saul was from what tribe?
Benjamite.
From Benjamin. And what was the size of the tribe?
Small.
I think it says it was the smallest of the tribes, because they were wiped out. And then they would intermarry by having the girls dance near there, and they would be hiding in the field, and they would go and steal a girl, because everybody was wiped out. That's the way they were trying to build up the tribe again. What a way to do it. We'll have our armies. Have our armies. All right, the judges. And here are the 12 of them. Othniel, Caleb's nephew. Ehud. He's the one that stabbed the...
What's his name in the
He
rib?
was stabbed. The dagger into the back. And by the way, there was peace after that. They get the leader. Shamgar. You learned, I guess these are lessons to learn. You can do it yourself. Deborah, what we learned from that, there wasn't a man in the land, so then God uses a woman. God will use a woman if he has to. All right, so Barak said, oh yeah, I'll go if you go with me. And what was said then? He said, well, then, she said, well, then you won't get the honor, I will get the honor. He wasn't going to go unless she went with him. Jael, she was blessed above women. So the thing about who is the one that's blessed by the Roman Catholics? Pardon? Mary. Blessed art thou among women. What's in the notes? But in here, Jael is blessed above women. There is a difference there. And she knew how to work the hammer and the nail. And she drove it through the guy's temple. So just be careful where you fall asleep, guys. All right, Luke 1:28, I think in my side notes, it's among women, but for Mary, but Jael is blessed above women. The story of Gideon, Judges 6, is and that is the Lord stays with you. Folks, God can do a whole lot with just a few people. With just a few people. Right? Jerubbaal, Judges 6. That's his name. Isn't that Gideon's name? I believe it is. Tola, Judges 10. Some of these are not much, just the verse said about them. Move on to the next one. Ger, in Judges 10. Jephthah, Judges 11 through Judges 12. Oh yeah, he's the one that makes this vow. First one that comes out, I will slay. So he slew his daughter, it's a foolish vow, but he is able to get out of, there's something in the law that enables him to get out of the vow without really knowing the law completely. He could have got out of the vow, but he doesn't, probably by not knowing the law, and he slays her anyway. Ibzan, Judges 12, Elon, Judges 12, Aban. These are people we don't really know well. We're going to stop here. We're almost 5 minutes to the hour. And then if I feel we should go through some of that, I will. Otherwise, we'll pick it up here with Samson. Everybody knows all about Samson, right? And we will preach and still say that Samson is a perfect type of Christ. Father, bless now the preaching in Christ's name.